WTA side, Aryna Sabalenka, look, she made the finals of Indian Wells, and Mira Andreeva, staged that comeback, won that match in 3 sets. It's, you got that one right. You said you thought Andreeva would win Indian Wells. I will give myself a pat on the back. I picked Aryna Sabalenka to win Miami. I thought she was going to right the ship because she was very close at Indian Wells. You make a change to a hard court surface, which is a little bit quicker. The conditions are different at Hard Rock Stadium. It just felt like she was the player to beat. And she defeats Jessica Pegula 7-5, 6-2 to take the title. She's now, I looked, over 3,000 points ahead of Iga Swiatek for the #1 ranking. And, it doesn't feel like that long ago that those two were almost jostling for it. This is like a sizable gap now.
Well, I remember us having that conversation back in, I want to say September, and at the
Yeah.
time we were kind of debating, well, can Sabalenka overtake Swiatek? And now look what she's done. So super impressive for that reason. A couple other things that really impressed me with what Sabalenka's done here. One of them is the fact that after her finalist result at the Aussie Open, she really struggled in 2 back-to-back hardcourt tournaments in the Middle East with early losses in both of them. So for her to bounce back from that really quickly and reestablish herself as the predominant hardcourt player right now, I think was great. And another thing that also impressed me with this is just the back-to-back from Indian Wells to Miami. We've talked about it over the last few weeks, how difficult that is to maintain that consistency, to go through the changes in the conditions, the tennis balls, and just the grueling back-to-back. I mean, it's basically 4 weeks of WTA 1000 tennis. And for her to go from finals in Indian Wells to then triumph in Miami again is pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah, speaks volumes to her talent that she is, right now, without a doubt, the world's #1 player as we wrap up the hardcourt season. Should give credit to Jessica Pegula because I feel like it's been a slower 2025 for her so far. She didn't really do the damage she probably wanted at the Australian Open, and goes on a solid run where she had to grind out a few wins early. Anna Kalinskaya, who we've had on this podcast last summer, she beat her 7-6 in the third in her second round match. Emma Raducanu, who had a great resurgence and made the quarterfinals here, beat Emma Navarro along the way. She pushed Pegula 3. And then Alexandra Ayala, who we touched on with Stephen Boughton, she had to go the distance to take out the Filipino girl 6-3 in the third. So it was a lot of time on court for Pegula. I think we both know from, watching her first in Toronto, such a smart, resilient player. She seems to have like a great ability to reset as well when things are not going her way. I think back to that final against Amanda Anisimova. She dropped the second set and she just bore down in the third and was so rock solid and steady to get the victory.
Yeah, she plays so well in Canada with back-to-back titles in Montreal and Toronto. Maybe, Canada needs more 1,000 level tournaments for
Maybe.
her to keep that going. But she's so steady and so consistent. And, we talked about last summer at the US Open, her having that first major breakthrough, getting to the finals of a Grand Slam for the first time, and wondering what it would be like in 2025 for her. Would that help her to play more freely? And as you mentioned, maybe we haven't seen the same level of consistency so far this year, but this definitely bodes well moving forward for her.
Yeah, and I mentioned Alexandra Ayala as the wild card. She moves to number 75 from number 140 in the rankings, which is astonishing to produce that type of run in Miami. Beat Madison Keys along the way, beat Iga Swiatek. Um, Iga again. Here's a question I'll pose. Not really a good sunshine double for her standards, given quarterfinals loss to Ayala. She lost to Andreeva twice in previous tournaments in Dubai and then Indian Wells. Is Iga still far and away your favorite for the clay court swing, or does this suddenly get a little closer because she's maybe shown a few hiccups or wrinkles?
Yeah, I mean, Sabalenka's narrowed the gap the last couple years with some strong clay court results of her own. But I think Iga, when she gets back to playing on that red dirt, is just gonna, feel that comfort level and take it up a notch. To me, it's gonna be really boring if we do like, who do you think's gonna win this tournament? As we go through the clay court season, because
Yeah.
I think I'll probably be picking Swiatek every single time. I mean, she's got a lot of points to defend for sure, but that pressure's never seemed to bother her. To me, I'm more curious to see how she tries to make adjustments when we get back to hard courts in 4 months or whatever the case will be in that Cincinnati and Montreal back to back. or Montreal, Cincinnati, rather,
Yeah.
because she's clearly going to be wanting more results from herself on that surface.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. And someone who's won the U.S. Open in the past probably wants to feel like a contender there. Who knows? Maybe she can make noise at Wimbledon. I guess we shouldn't skip over our third slam as well, just in case. Other news and notes from the women's side. This is an interesting one that a lot of people were talking about. Daria Kasatkina, who's been, a kind of a top 10, top 15 mainstay on the WTA tour. One of the few players, I would say, of Russian nationality who's been somewhat outspoken about the war and outspoken about President Vladimir Putin, has changed her nationality to Australian. Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, it's not surprising to me. Clearly, the fact of her, or the potential of her being able to reconcile and be able to carry on representing her country of birth, I think after her outspoken stance, or to ever move back there or live there, was probably out of the question, given what that regime is like. One of the few outspoken players, as you mentioned, and for good reason, because many players there probably feel, what's at stake. Their families who are still living there, fearing for their safety if they speak out or they're too outspoken. They're kind of silenced into not speaking out on the matter, although I'm sure they've got opinions on it. But Kasakina, huge respect for her for being someone who's always been very vocal and against the regime there. And she's such a happy person and an outgoing,
Yes.
fun-loving person that I think representing Australia, home of the Happy Slam, just seems like a really good fit for her.
Yeah, and she's said in the past how much I think she loves going down under for the first slam of the season, and seems to have a great connection to that country. And we shouldn't gloss over, I think, the fact that you mentioned, she's outgoing, quite authentic. She has a YouTube page. It's well known that she's a member of the LGBTQ community, and probably laws in her country of origin, Russia, don't really gel with her lifestyle in those respects. And I can understand as well. She's always been very authentic and true to herself. This change in nationality as well makes sense from that angle too.
Yeah, well said. And her YouTube page, along with her partner, I forget her partner's name, but she's a Russian figure skater. They're hilarious together, and they did a great one from Toronto last summer. If you
Oh
want to
yeah.
go back and sift through it, it's really high quality stuff and behind the scenes stuff with all the players. They have a lot of laughs. It's super fun to watch. And Kasatkina gets extra points in my books for also playing in the ball hockey challenge every summer that she
Mm,
comes to Toronto and
yep.
Montreal, and has some pretty silky mitts. She's got some good hands with a hockey stick as well. So and was seeming to have a great time with that also last summer. So I always respect those players who trade the tennis racket for the hockey stick at the start of the tournament here, and she's certainly one of them.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I could see her being a very good hockey player. Australia, I think the women's side has needed another really strong player since Ash Barty left. So maybe they can embrace Daria Kasatkina changing the nationality. Thank you guys so much for watching us at Matchpoint Canada. If you like our work, follow along, hit the subscribe button below.